Post combat, now entering second main phase.
Hello and welcome in everybody to the second main phase. This is a competitive Magic the Gathering podcast brought to you by Team Main Phase and our wonderful sponsors, Kangaroo Tales and everyone's favorite, the Mana Vault in Milwaukee. I am one of your regular co-hosts. My name is Jason Cornell, joined as always with Doug Bailey. Doug, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I finally got over my sickness that Chris
A lot
gave
of
me.
people getting sick. Yeah, I don't know what y'all did in Vegas, but everyone came back sick or was getting sick, and y'all stay far away from me.
You know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, baby.
Unless you come home sick with it. Then you have to...
No, it still stays in Vegas.
Okay, yeah. We don't talk about that. It stayed in Vegas.
Yeah.
You're right. Yep. Gotcha.
So our triumphant return. Thank you to the viewers for being patient with us. I do apologize. I did sound like a Darth Vader doing a Doug impression a couple days ago.
Yeah, we couldn't really do the podcast when we wanted to. We told everybody we were going to take the week off for leading into Vegas, and then we turned into 2 weeks with the sickness. So
yeah, I do
glad
apologize.
to be back in the seat. Glad to be back in the cast here, talking Magic with my good buddies.
Yep, for sure. Definitely excited. PT was pretty crazy. Definitely my called shots did not get called. I said it was going to be...
They were missed.
Yeah, they were missed shots. Green White definitely surprised me as a contender with Ouroboros Raid as well. But I was right in one thing. That Team Main Phase did cook a little.
Yeah. I don't want to toot our own horn, but I've come to trust that we're going to deliver, something somewhere, somehow. We're going to make sure people notice, Yeah.
So later on in the episode, we're going to have our interview with Mr. Chris Kral, Team Main Phase member and top 32 competitor at Pro Tour Strixhaven, about his experience with Mardu and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have that interview for you guys. But first, we need to do a mailbag, Doug. We've got some questions.
Main Phase mailbag. You got questions, I got answers. Main Phase mailbag. It's the Main Phase mailbag. Ding. Pending copyright.
Pending copyright. So this week's question was again another X Twitter submission, I believe. Right? What is your routine or ritual that you always follow before a big event? It's kind of funny this ends up being our question because we actually talked about this in the interview a little bit, where kind of some of our pre-tournament jitters and things like that. But Doug, do you have anything that you kind of consistently do leading up to an event? Anything prior or anything that's kind of just a superstition even maybe?
This is kind of a boring answer, but I kind of follow a lot of sports stars do. I'm a big sports guy. I follow a lot of players and stuff, and one of their main things is like the day of event, just or a sporting event, or a Magic Gathering event, just keeping your head in the game, like staying focused on what's going on, get a good night's rest, make sure you eat a good breakfast, high and in this case, carbohydrates and proteins that kind of help your brain go. Get a nice, good, big bottle or cup of water. Yeah, stay hydrated. And I'm a big mental player. I get anxious a lot and get nervous a lot. So usually during the event, before the event, after the event, I have like my go-to playlist. So I'm listening to, keeping kind of focusing on myself rather than the game, and just trying to stay fresh and stay away from the jitters. So I have a I have a pump up jam list on Spotify that I keep on. And so if you see me events, if I have headphones, I'm trying to get myself back in the game, out of my head.
You want to stay in that zone, that kind of sweet spot. I can appreciate that.
Yeah. So usually, before, as I'm walking into the event, I'm singing a song. Everyone, we're in the group, everyone's walking, and I'm just kind of like dancing to the side, getting ready. And it might be stupid, but I found that I've done a lot better when I do this, when I kind of pump myself up. So until
Yeah, I think
I owe for an event. I'm gonna keep doing this, even if I look stupid.
no, I think it kind of makes a little bit of sense to like lighten up, keep yourself, try to relieve some of that stress, right?
Mhm.
We're anxious, we're ready to play this, something that we've spent a lot of time practicing for, prepping for. We want to make sure that we have those good results, or give ourselves the best opportunity to be successful. And so we're putting a lot of stress, a lot of pressure on ourselves, and anything to kind of lighten that makes sense to me, and just kind of not bring that baggage in with you, right? Kind of go in
Yeah,
fresh and ready to go. So that makes
yeah.
sense, right?
What about you, Jason?
I'm kind of the same way, honestly. I'm kind of a boring answer. Good night's sleep, eat well. You know, certain people may not ever sleep, but I like sleep. Turns
Yeah.
out, it's actually I like it. So I'm a big fan of getting as much sleep as I can. I do like to kind of get up early, a little earlier than maybe I even need to, just because I'm such a zombie in the morning. I'm such a not a morning person, right? So it takes me 2 hours, 3 hours before I feel like I can have an intelligent conversation. And that's even with like, taking a shower, having a cup of coffee, waking up, trying to get the brain chemicals kind of going, I guess. I'm just so not there in the morning, this fog kind of thing. So if I start playing too early, that, I'll bring that in. And that's actually happened to me a couple of times. Day two of San Diego, I was 6-1 and 7-0 and 1. I had a really great day one for San Diego RC. I don't remember what my
Mhm.
record was, but it's fantastic. I think I took one loss maybe in day one. And so I'm starting off day two. I've got a small hill to climb to be in a really good position to maybe put myself in the top eight. That I know that I threw my first match because I was still too tired, still not awake, and not ready to really have that high level thinking. So I specifically remember that's an event that I kicked myself in the butt for a lot because that I started off day one fantastic and I just really crashed and burned that early.
Yeah. I think the main thing is that like I think too many Magic players like sometimes have degenerate lifestyles and like sleep schedules and stuff, but I really think it's important that when you're getting ready for something huge that you have a different preparation than the everyday, and you put emphasis on your body, because like even though we're not doing anything strenuous, we're sitting in a chair flicking cards, right? I still
Science
think.
says that your stress and your heart rate increase, and that alone is enough to create this physical exhaustion. It's like the thing. I mean, ESPN's done an article on this with chess players that you're just sitting there and you're thinking, and you have to move a piece around. Like there's no physical exertion, right? Those guys go through the same amount of physical stress that 90 minutes of NFL physical football would be,
Yeah, but that was the
whatever
point I
the
was trying to
analogy
make, right?
is.
Like even if it doesn't look like you're stressing a lot, you're putting a lot of stress on your body, mentally and physically. So like I think the best thing you can do is get 7 hours to 8 hours of sleep, get a good strong breakfast high in protein, high in carbohydrates, and just get a ritual that works for you. Get
Yeah,
yourself
and
in the game, man.
yeah, I think. I mean, we all know we all have our own routines and our own. Like I said, I'm a zombie in the morning. I stink at mornings, and I know that. And so I intentionally will wake up earlier to give myself enough time to kind of get my routine, get my situation going. Music's a good thing, like you said, staying focused, staying light. There's a lot of good things out there you can try, but you got to trust your own uh,
Yeah.
body and make sure you're just doing the right stuff. Basic stuff.
And yeah, and to go on to a little tangent, if you are in tune to how you react to things, like you can prevent yourself from getting tilted in the future as well. Like
Yep.
again, I start
Good
with
point.
music, and if like one of my things is like one thing that I used to be really bad with is I would let a bad mistake in a game affect the rest of my tournament, and so the music's helped with that. So if that
You
helps
gotta
with
have
that,
that
that's
reset.
why, yeah, if that helps with that reset, then if I start the morning with that, then I already set the tone of how the day is going to be, and it makes if that situation does happen a lot easier to get through that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think
So
that's a really, really good call out. We all know what our weaknesses are, or just have an honest conversation. You just think about it, like, hey, what are my actual weaknesses? Do I get tilted
mhm,
easy? If you're saying, Doug, hey, I made this mistake here, that can carry over to my next match. You just don't want anything like that. And I think I'm fortunate enough that I don't typically do that, but I do know that I stink at waking up, and I just so just take the precautions, take those steps to make sure you set yourself up for success.
Mm.
All right, so we've got a special guest lined up for everybody today. Fresh off of his top 32 finish at Pro Tour Secrets of Strixhaven, we've got Chris Kral with us.
Hello, everyone.
How's it
We're
going, Chris?
not
How we doing?
worthy.
I'm doing great. I'm a little tired from coming home from Vegas, but feeling
Yeah.
good.
So first off, congratulations again on the top 32 finish. Kind of a bit of a milestone there for you. I'm sure that you're pretty happy to have that solid finish and to have this requal for the next kind of PT lined up for you. How are you kind of feeling now? A little jet lag, a little tired, and all that, but has it kind of sunk in for you?
Yeah, it's probably my greatest Magic accomplishment so far.
Why don't we? We're gonna kind of go through some questions here for you. We've got lined up. Let's start. Let's kind of just jump back and take it from the top here. Let's go back to prior to the PT. Right before SOS hits the streets. There, walk me through kind of what you were feeling, what you were thinking about the format, where we start to see a little spoilers kind of sprinkle in from Street Secrets. But did you have something you kind of leaning towards?
Yeah. So early on, I think everybody was kind of on the same page that uh, coming out of Milwaukee, like the breakout deck was Izzet Prowess, and obviously Mono Green Landfall is looking really good. So every deck that we were testing kind of just had to be put through the ringer on mainly those two decks. We got Excruciator floating around in there too. But early on in spoilers, I think we got Delian Fill pretty early as a spoiler, and that was the card that I was the most interested in. I know we had a lot of dialogue about that. Some comparisons to Omnixilus Reignited, which I know is a favorite of yours.
Yes.
But I think the conclusion that we came to was that Omnixilus is not quite standard playable right now. I really hope that changes post rotation, but given the the standard metagame at the time, it's something that I think we picked up and maybe play tested for like a couple days, but didn't quite line up. There's a couple ways to build it too, but yeah, the Golgari like mid range / control decks were definitely the thing that I was the most interested in early on.
Yeah, Jason and I talked about it on our last podcast a lot. We think that deck would be very well positioned in a slower format, especially with the Bloom Charm. Just being able to like sack extra tokens to get a lot of value out of that could be huge if the format was a lot slower. Maybe if like Storm Chaser's Talent or Crab were banned, I think that would be really good.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, I think it's really close to kind of like breaking that barrier of playability. I really hope that it gets its time to shine, maybe at the start of next year with rotation.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting one to kind of keep our eye on and see if rotation can kind of unlock it from where it's currently trapped in standard.
Or maybe some bannings. We do have a ban window coming up. I'd be surprised if anything changes. But hopefully, Wizards could surprise us. You always hope.
Yeah.
I think another thing that was tried in the very early stages of testing was the Opus combo deck that kind of similar to what Team Sanctum brought to the PT.
Yeah.
Just trying. We felt like it wasn't strong enough and it was easy to interact with. So I think we kind of got off of that pretty quickly. I think we spent like a day or two on that deck, trying different iterations with loot, finding that we didn't feel loot was very good in the format.
Well, early on, Zach saw Molten Core Maestro and really just like got infatuated with the card. Really tried to make all the things work with like Ashling's Command. Honestly, his early iterations really look similar to what Sanctum ended up on. Plus minus a couple cards here and there. But the core concept kind of remained the same. But we were missing a piece. I think early on in like Haga Trees testing, we had the core Maestro deck built, and then some card got spoiled like a week after. That caused us to like go back and look at the deck again, and it might have been loot. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was loot, but we went back. yeah, we went back and looked at it again, gave it like another couple days, and then ultimately we were just like, all right, this is not. We didn't think it was a Pro Tour deck, So we scrapped it and started focusing more on established decks or maybe some other brews that we had cooking up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was another card that kind of wasn't the Rouse Eric spoiled fairly early? Did that kind of
Yeah.
sidetrack you guys anywhere? That was a card that I saw in spoilers and I thought had a lot of potential and kind of surprised. Well, not surprised, but was hopeful that there would be something that would come from it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it kind of just got overshadowed by Delian Fell for us. Like, the two Planeswalkers kind of got spoiled around the same time, and when you put them side by side, Delian Fell was like the clear, more exciting card, more powerful card. It had there's more inspiration behind it for us. Well, for me, I can't speak for everybody on the testing team, but Ral, we did try to like make a couple like Esper Oculus builds and um, stuff like that. But really, Ral just like didn't do it for us.
Okay, so after that, team starts meeting for some weekly testing. We've got a chance to kind of dive into Secret of Strixhaven. The full set's out now. Kind of walk us through for the audience here. Now that we've kind of pushed forward a little bit in time, was there anything at that point that changed? Was there anything that kind of really surprised you now that we've got the full set of secrets out? Was there that first card, they're like, okay, we went through spoiler season, we got to come up with a couple ideas, but now we've got the whole set here. We're really kind of getting to crunch time. Was there, something else that really caught you guys' attention? Where did you guys go kind of from that point?
So we really focus on limited, learning the cards, making sure we're familiar. After that, we're really trying to hone in on standard and see if there were any brews that we could build. One of these was the Mardu Discard deck that I ended up registering for the Pro Tour. This was Gavin's brainchild. He worked so hard on it, and he kind of early on he was pretty much working on it solo. Like, we kind of just had this divide and conquer mindset where if you felt particularly strongly about a brew, you would kind of just like go off. Obviously we can consult each other for opinions and card choices and stuff like that, but you would go off and make your standard deck and then just like battle on cockatrice to see if it stood the test of, is it prowess, landfall, excruciator, cub, stuff like that. And the Mardu deck started pretty promising, but we didn't know, we were missing a couple pieces. And so we had some other brews lined up. I know we were really looking at resonating loot. That was another thing. I actually found I was the first person in our group to find Tablet of Discovery as a card that had potential. So we put loot and tablet, like 4 copies of each, in this control deck with Capstone, and that
Just got rough.
yeah, that is like
Yeah.
that has proved itself to be a powerful deck. I was just a little off, like loot really hasn't made its way into the control decks. It started there, but I think people realized that it was kind of slow and clunky, and tablet was just good enough. Tapping on turn 3 versus turn 4 is a huge deal, and tablet sometimes just lets you interact on turn 3 when you cast it.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really close on that one, but overall I just wasn't super happy with the prowess matchup. So kind of moved away from that. And then I kind of got, a little worried. Was just like, oh man, am I gonna have to play prowess for this Pro Tour? And because I really hate the like, is it spells like agency pill deck? That's not really my jam. So I was trying to get as best as trying to get as proficient with the deck as I could. Once Gavin came to us and was like, all right, this Mardu deck is really something, I trust Gavin a lot. So I started getting in some games with that, and it felt really strong.
Yeah, but before we get into going with Gavin, what was the main issue you had with the loot and the control decks?
The main thing was you're heavily incentivized to play it on turn 4 because that's how you maximize the value that you get out of it. But turn 4 felt like the turn in standard where it was really what happened on both players' turn 4s really felt like it decided the game. And if your turn 4 was cast Darksteel Relic Go, it was not good. You just like get Ouroboroded or get Rhythm Hoofed, or Mono Green would just
basics.
kill you for 32. Yeah, or Boomerang Basics was just like time walk you and bounce it to your hand. The turns where you got to untap with loot on turn 5 were insane. They were incredible. But it just felt like it was kind of a pipe dream. Like it was really hard to make work. And the payoff was there, but it wasn't consistent enough, and it felt like you weren't really doing anything that was like uniquely powerful without the loot.
Yeah, I agree. Also, a lot of the testing against prowess was against the elusive otter version of prowess, because at that time, the heavy crab version still wasn't the mainstay that we see now. The decks were a lot faster at that time. I still think we're in a era that the format's too fast for loot to be very good. But I definitely think that is something that we can look to in the future, especially if things slow down with bannings.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, yes. Well, from there things kind of narrowed down, right? We've tested a few things. We've got this our Mardu idea kind of floating around, like you mentioned. Gavin had kind of been, in the lab cooking with that. How do we kind of boil things down for you guys, right? So we've got a couple of decks. Was there a couple of other options that were the team had kind of come up with, or split a few different ways? But hey, we've got this Mardu brew over here that one person's really excited about. Did we have anything else on the table that was kind of an option for us? You mentioned prowess and just kind of falling back on that, and your kind of reluctancy to that. Was there something else that was kind of sitting there for you guys, or?
I think for me personally, at least, I'll go down that first. Personally, the deck that I wanted to register for the Pro Tour, and this is like a month out, this is pretty early on, was Azorius Momo. I think that deck was really strong into the early iterations of prowess. But as the metagame evolved and there was, prowess kind of slowed down and got less reliant on just like the early aggression, played more Eddie Merc crabs, and then even the thing that really turned me off from Momo was seeing the adaptations of prowess playing Sunderflock in the sideboard. That's when I knew that it was looking pretty bad for Momo to be a Pro Tour contender for me. So that was the deck that I really, really wanted to play. It's got a lot of, my favorite cards. I think Quantum Riddler is one of the best cards in Standard, and I really enjoy playing with the card. But it just didn't end up going that way because you're so weak to Sunderflock. And, obviously Spell Elementals, that was another deck I didn't even mention. Spell Elementals was also just a huge metagame percentage. So the thing about the Izzet decks is that they're so hard to attack effectively because they're so flexible. So when you're creating a deck to be well positioned in a prowess, you have to be prepared for all three versions. You have to be prepared for the early aggression with the Boomerang Basics, Storm Chaser's talent draws. You have to be prepared for their like mid-rangey, crab tempo kind of plan. And then you have to be prepared for them to take a control route where they play Roaring Furnaces and just kind of grind you out and then win with, a crab or two otters, on turn 10.
Doug, was there anything else that you had kind of fallen in love with during the testing process?
So throughout the process, I was mostly the foil of the thing because I was on the Pro Tour, obviously. So I mostly played the villains. Yeah. So a lot of people were not looking towards mono green, so I was always trying to keep my eye out for what mono green would look like post rotation. So I was trying a lot of different mono green variants. I was definitely high on a full all-in mono green version month out. But ended up scratching it because of the Crab's surgeons into most of the prowess decks. So I felt like an all-in didn't make sense at that point.
You're talking about the planar engineering, like Tifa piles? Yeah. We looked at that.
Planar engineering with Tifa, planar engineering with Bristly Bill, with like 4 of the Hydra's main deck.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with more crabs going in the format, that kind of pipe dream kind of died pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I just always try to keep a good, solid, moderate mono green disc. I did see a green-white list like a week or two prior to the Pro Tour. I ended up kind of just saying that was cute. Obviously, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Obviously, but definitely an error in my judgment. But yeah, I was just locked in on mono green.
All right, so Chris, so you kind of gone through some of the testing process. What where you guys' heads were at. Let's jump forward a little bit to that week before the Pro Tour, right? So you're getting ready to fly out to Vegas. We're going to be there for the testing house. Team's going to show up, and we're going to go through all of that. What's your mindset looking like at that point in time? Are we feeling pretty confident? Hoping to learn a few more things at the testing house. What are you feeling there, and how are things? What's your outlook at that?
And I would also like to add, what made you finally lock in Mardu?
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know if I told people this, but I was locked on Mardu before I even got on the plane. I definitely made that decision before making it to the testing house. I like to, know what I'm playing pretty early, as early as I can. I like to be confident in my decisions, and I really don't want to have that like second guess feeling. So I locked in Mardu. I really trusted Gavin with his process. He's very good at articulating his thought process, and we had very long conversations about our roles and matchups and card choices, and what does like our fundamental game plan look like, and all of those sounded really good to me. The deck sounded really powerful. One of the big issues that we kind of agreed on was the consistency, but I mean, if you look at standard, the track record for like the best decks has kind of trended to forgoing consistency in favor of power.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we have stuff like VV where it was extremely consistent and extremely powerful, but it's been really important that every standard deck has like this nut draw that you're chasing, right? And then a good follow up, like backup plan, I guess. So with this deck, we identified that like the nut draw was, turn 1 you play ideally Moonshadow because it has Menace, and then turn 2 you academic, and then you get to attack and like discard a card, hit him for 4, and then the next turn you could just win with offense.
Mm-hmm.
So like finding this like turn 3 kill, which doesn't require that much of you. I mean, it's it does require a lot, but for a turn 3 kill, and you're also just not playing mopey cards. You're playing like this fast aggressive deck that even if you don't draw the turn 3 kill, you're still just like applying pressure, interacting where you can, and like getting under those those slower decks, especially the Izzet decks had kind of slowed down to kind of fight each other. Now that they weren't developing their board as quickly with the Storm Caesar talents and elusive otters and slick shots and stuff like that, they were kind of more focused on the crabs. It really lets you get in a lot of damage early, and then we just got to kill them late with Coolbit Root. So like that plan against the slower Izzet decks was what really drew me to the deck. Like the deck felt really good into the Izzet piles. Iron Shield Elf was a huge contributor to that. So I mean that's what made me want to play the deck, really.
Yeah, I also think that like even with the faster versions, Hardened Academic getting lifelink from the discard, 4/3 lifelink double striker against the kind of more otter all-in versions of prowess also felt really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what pushed it from being like a fringe deck to like a contender early, because in that early process we were still testing against the more aggressive versions of prowess.
Yeah, the ability to race was a huge factor against the aggressive decks too. Yeah.
Yeah, the lifelink you get from the hardened academic or lifelink you get off of the offense itself seems pretty important, especially with those, earlier builds like we've kind of referenced here of the prowess decks that were more focused on trying to be fast and less about flow state and being more grindy and more about let's put pressure on you, wild ride type stuff maybe.
Yep. I arrive in Vegas. I traveled with Curtis, and we did some. You do the thing where like you wait for your Airbnb to open, and you just kind of have to like find a restaurant and play Magic and with all your luggage and stuff. And so we got
Yeah.
to jam some more Mardu, passing the time, and the games felt really good. I played I'm pretty sure Doug got in that day as well. We got to play test some mono green. I play tested some against the like Spell Elementals deck with the Color Storm Stallion. That matchup felt really good. It always feels nice, leading up into a tournament, whether it be, an RCQ, an RC, or a Pro Tour, knowing that you're going in and you feel confident in your choice. And I think that's extremely important, even if you didn't make the perfect choice, right? The perfect choice for this Pro Tour really looks like Silesian Landfall, and we didn't find that. But, I found something good enough, and I felt good enough about it to, give me a strong performance at the PT. I'm really happy with what what we found and how I ended up. I think that's a large contributor to your performance at these events is just how comfortable you feel with the deck too.
I think that's a good point. Like it's not always about finding the perfect deck, right? Like that happens every once in a while. The thing that I always think of is was it Team CFB had the colorless Eldrazi deck in the beginning of the Eldrazi winter thing. That deck was just nobody was ready for that. That type of thing happens so seldomly, and it should be as Magic players we tend to get too focused on. I need the perfect deck. I need the perfect deck. I need the best deck. I need to break it sort of philosophy or mentality. Often that just falls short, kind of just having a good deck with a good game plan, with some good experience and some good understanding of what those matchups are. I'm going to play some of these, 5 most popular decks, and my deck feels pretty good into that. Like I have, I have a chance, I have a shot. And that's, a lot of times that's kind of all you need.
There is a correction I do have to make. I think those are all good points, and I think being and like feeling confident in yourself as a Magic player is something like a lot of myself included struggle with. So like having that little boost, that little chip on your shoulder can go a long way, especially when you're trying to solidify, limited game plans and like how to hit that hurdle that we have to go through. Because like with constructed, everything's more controlled, whereas limited can be, it's kind of the luck of the draw, what you see at the table, that kind of stuff. But one thing I do want to correct is that it's Chef Curtis, not just Curtis.
Yeah.
A big shout out to Curtis. He was very instrumental in the testing house. He did a lot of like the cooking, a lot of moral support. He was the limited guru. So before we move on, I just wanted to shout out Curtis. I think everyone in that house agreed that he was the heart and soul of that house for sure.
Yeah, I mean he came literally just to help us with limited prep, be a body in constructed games, cook for us, go to the store when we needed to, and kind of led our limited meeting. Curtis did so much for us, and I can't. That was our secret weapon. Not every other team had a Curtis. So shout out Curtis. You were awesome, buddy.
Yeah, love you guys. Yeah, I mean that's the unique thing that we have. We have just so much sacrifice, to help everybody. We're it's not just about my own personal success or my own personal goals. It's so much of us coming together as a team and really stepping out for each other. So, absolutely.
This testing house was really awesome. I really enjoyed working with everybody. Unfortunately, I did get sick the Monday that we got there. I started getting, a sore throat, a little congested that Monday night.
Yeah.
But I woke up Tuesday. I couldn't talk. I had to mask up and take medicine. So I pretty much I also just lost an entire day of prep. I stayed in bed until like 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. or something. Doug went and got me some medicine. Shout out Doug. Uh, and I felt really bad because I couldn't help. And
Right.
I think that was the worst feeling, was feeling that I was just kind of a waste of space in the testing house. I couldn't give feedback or help people out. I mean, that was only for about a day. I think I woke up Wednesday, after taking some medicine, felt a little bit better. I could walk around the house with a mask on and have some conversations about mainly limited. I think at that point we were really honing in on limited. But yeah, I mean, losing a day and a half of prep really did not help, and I was honestly that did a little bit of damage to my mental leading up into the Pro Tour. Normally, I'm very calm, collected, and ready to get it done. I, it was really tough, when I went to sleep Thursday night, and I was like, damn, I only got 3.5 days of the testing house, and I feel like shit, and it's that really sucked. But obviously, it wasn't enough to stop me from having a good performance at the PT. So
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that losing any amount of time when you've got I've set aside this dedicated time for us to do focused, limited work, focused matchup work, finalize our deck list, those things, get all that submitted. Anytime you're losing any amount of time, just sick. It just just your body, I'm tired. I don't have enough energy. That kind of stuff leading into the Pro Tour is just, not the way you want to start your Pro Tour off.
yep, but you do your best with what you got.
How did that limited prep look like? I think Curtis actually did an interesting thing that I think we haven't done before, which I would encourage to keep doing moving forward. Can you go into how his meeting kind of went?
Yeah, so I don't think we can take all the credit for this. This is heavily inspired by Team CFB. I don't know if any of you watching have also watched Jim Davis's video where he went over kind of what their Pro Tour prep looked like, and it was a really awesome video. I highly recommend going to watch it. But the way that they did their, at least for commons and uncommons, their prep was they physically had the copies of the cards, just from draft boxes or whatever, and physically laid out their pick order. And that was something that I thought was really fascinating. And I talked with Curtis about it, and we actually did get to implement for this Pro Tour. It was very helpful, physically moving the cards, being able to have those conversations, sitting at a table, was really impactful to the quality of the test, or the quality of the conversations that we had. Being able to change our mind on something and move stuff around physically all together, it doesn't sound like it would make a big difference, but it really does. I feel like I retained the information better. I was more engaged than just sitting at a screen talking over Discord or something like that. It was very helpful. And not everybody agreed, but as long as you get some kind of baseline, and because limit is all, you're never going to get enough experience by yourself to get a good gauge on the format. It would take at least 100 drafts, 150 drafts or something like that. It's so many. You have to play each archetype X amount of times to get a feel of what your average deck looks like, your best deck looks like, what's a below average deck look like. It's just too much for one person to do. And that's really the benefit of having a team, is that you get to share this information so easily and communicate about shared experiences, or maybe not shared experiences. Hey, I had really good experiences with this card or this archetype, but you didn't. Let's talk about it. Obviously that's not exclusive to sitting at a table and doing it together physically, but it sure does help. So I think that this was among our best limited Pro Tour prep. I felt really prepared, just because we got to have those conversations. It did take a long time. It was 6-7 hours.
Yeah, those limited meetings can get real long.
Yeah, like in the moment, you're like, ugh, man, like this is starting to drag. But like, you know that you're doing really important work. Like it doesn't feel like you're doing a whole lot. You're like, this information can't possibly pay off for me that well. Well, it does.
Yeah.
Like that prep will make or break your PT. And I, couldn't ask for better people to surround myself with for it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a combination of visual, but also you get to like, just being able to touch the cards and have that discussion and say, hey, I really have this higher here. This is my break point for this. Like, I don't think it could fall any lower than this. And you kind of get to paint a larger, more clear picture. So I like this method. I think that hopefully that's something that we can maybe keep incorporating. And shout out to Jim Davis and a lot of the cool stuff that he does. So flashing forward to that Friday morning, we've been sick. We've gone through the limited stuff. We're in Vegas. What are you feeling at that point in time? Did you like look back at it and say, okay, I really enjoyed this limited format. I felt like it was interesting and there was a lot of nuance and cool stuff that we learned. Did it feel like, all right, well, at least I've got a fun standard deck that I like. I've got this sort of maybe rogue-ish type deck that people aren't quite prepared for. Hopefully I can find some success just by catching people off. We talked about the limited prep and how amazing that felt, and feeling really comfortable with that. Anything else kind of going through your head there that Friday morning?
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is this was my third Pro Tour, and
that was my next question.
My first two, my first two were, I felt so much. This has just always been my dream to like be on the PT consistently, and my first two I felt anxious, like excited, but that queasy feeling where you're like you're unsure and you really want to do good, but it's hard to be confident when you're playing against the best players in the world, and I really didn't have that feeling for this one, in a good way. I still am very excited to be there, and I'm like, it is still my dream, but I didn't have that anxious feeling.
The jitters start to go away a little bit. Those butterflies. Yeah, like you're saying, Doug.
Yeah.
Like I kind of felt like that for when I hit my third one. I was kind of like, okay, the first one, I'm like, I don't know how I got here. I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Like that was a lot of the stuff that I was thinking. Like, there's no shot. I'm just happy to be here, right? And then get to the second, the third one, and you start to feel a little bit more comfortable, and you're like, okay, hey, I've got a little bit of success under my belt, or just I'm getting accustomed to how the pressure of the event or the excitement of the event.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of emotions that you're feeling. So, I that resonates.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome goes away. And
yeah, I definitely feel that too. I definitely have this experience, and I can definitely draw to it for sure. Honestly, like I stopped feeling that after like my 12th Pro Tour. You know what I mean?
Really? Yeah. I mean, Doug's such an old head here.
Yeah. I still haven't got to the PT, but I'm trying.
Any day, Doug.
We'll get there, Doug. This weekend.
Cincinnati is just around the corner. Around the corner here.
We're gonna make it happen.
Die trying, dang it.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a couple people that end up registering Mardu for the PT. A couple of people kind of splinter there at the last minute. People are going to fall into what their comfort zone is. So we'll kind of take a quick little peek behind the curtain here with, so we've got this Mardu deck that Gavin's really championed. A couple of us have fallen in love with it. What do you think? Was it a metagame read? Was it just a lack of comfort with it? Like, why did we have a little bit of splintering there?
I think this is mainly in a difference of approach to Magic. Me and Gavin were like, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going to get the best we can at this deck and just try to, catch people by surprise. And going into the testing house, we had like 4 other people, Patricio, Alan, Julian, Gabe. We had like 4 or 5 other people that were highly likely to play the deck as well, but that didn't end up happening. Sometimes you have a bad set and it kind of shakes your confidence a little bit, and you're just like, all right, let me just go with something established, because nobody wants to look like the idiot that registered a deck that is non-functional at the Pro Tour, and that's a risk that we took. I was okay with that risk, because I truly believed that we had something great, and I think my finish aside, I think we've been proven there because the deck has had so much success post PT as well. Like people are starting to pick it up.
Yeah.
It had that 9-0 day one in Spotlight London, and then it top 8 into the finals.
Second place at Spotlight London, and had a few other, it's some online results and things like that. But it's definitely popping up more, and it's now become a fixture in the metagame.
Yeah, and that's like so exciting. It's I've kind of been a part of that before. Me and Scott McNamara did the whole Demir bounce thing for Atlanta last year, and that was huge. He made it to the finals of the first Spotlight series in Atlanta, with that deck that we worked on together. And I was much more a part of that deck building process than I was for Mardu. I wish I could say that this was my brainchild, but it was not. Gavin really, really did a lot.
Cooking.
Yeah, he cooked. I can't say enough about how well Gavin did in the testing process. But like it's so validating. It's when you make something that is not just you're successful, other people are getting success from what you've created. It's really awesome to see that happen. But yeah, that's really exciting to see post PT. But that's kind of contributed to why other people didn't end up registering the deck. Was they just had bad games, things didn't go their way, and they got cold feet. It happens.
Yeah,
it really happens to the best of us. It's not exclusive to PT players. It's not exclusive to FNM players. RCQ players. It happens to everybody. Because it's really hard to break that personal experience mentality where if you have a bad personal experience, you just don't want to repeat that, right? My approach to Magic is slightly different in that if I feel like the plan makes sense, and let's say I lose 7 games in a row to prowess, if I truly believe that I have a good prowess matchup, and you can kind of like push through the variance a little bit. Sometimes you just get variance. Sometimes that happens. If you feel like you have a solid plan, and under normal circumstances you would be winning more than you would be losing, I think that's an acceptable outcome. To like lock in a deck. If you feel like you have a solid plan into 80% of the metagame, just do it, and then that's what I did.
It's totally natural for us to have cold feet leading into an event like that, but if the data suggests, or your experience suggests that, hey, I think this is a solid plan, I really feel like I know how to navigate these matchups, I feel comfortable with that. And it's something we've mentioned before, where it's not always I have to have the perfect deck. Just have a good plan and have good success rate. You're not going to win 100% of the games, right? The best players in all of Magic history don't win 80% of their games. They don't win 70% of the games, right? That's just not how it works. So to have this idea that we need to have this perfect outcome, this perfect deck, it's kind of a fallacy.
Yeah. I think it all goes back to confidence. You had that confidence about the deck. Some of the other players did not. And they let new data kind of change their decisions, and they didn't lean on all the data we had prior to the week in Vegas. And, again, they, like you said, they let a bad 7-game set change their minds. And I think we, looking back on it now, we can take that as like a learning thing. Like if you're in a testing situation, whether it's the PT, RCQs even, like if you have a lot of data that shows it's good and you have a lot of trust in that, you need to be vocal about it and be able to present that to other people and keep them on that track.
I think
it's a good point, Doug.
The only pushback to that, I agree with a lot of what you just said, but I am also a believer that if the deck doesn't work for you, the deck doesn't work for you. Like, that's something that
That's valid.
happened for
Yeah.
Gabe Nicholas on our team. Was he was just drawing really poorly with the deck. He gave the deck a fair shake, and it was not kind to him. You know, he'd miss land drops or draw too many lands, and it just happened too many times. And he was like, "All right, I'm over it." And that's fine. If it's not, if you don't feel, you know, excited or happy to play a deck, to register a deck, don't do it. Like, and that's really why, you know, in the beginning of the podcast I said I was really dreading, you know, maybe registering prowess, because that just doesn't vibe with me. You know, I'm a very vibes, like, intuition based player. You know, even if a deck has, you know, the only exception was VV. You know, VV, I played that deck because it was the best deck and nothing was close. But, and this is something I talked about with Alan, the choices in standard feel pretty close. So there's no wrong choice. You know, it's just making the best choice for you. I think that Magic players kind of get those lines blurred where they think that they get so obsessed with making the correct choice that they kind of forget that there's the second option of the correct choice for you. So that's something I would recommend. Maybe if you feel like you've been struggling with deck choice, just focus on what works for you.
Just to kind of carry that idea some more too, because I agree with that. I do think that there is a lot of what's right for me and what's wrong for others, or vice versa. Do you find a line that you have to draw in the sand there to say, let's say, you know, hey, you were a little hesitant with the VV deck when it was in standard, right? That's not really my cup of tea. That's not the direction I want to go. You know, is it just, hey, your teammates reeling you in and saying, Chris, you're crazy. This is the best deck. It's not even close. Everything else is light years behind it. Like, how do you balance that? How do you find that, you know, my preference is to play games this way, but, you know, I want to make sure, hey, you know, don't let Jason just run off and play prowess all the time, right? Like, if you're, you know, tell me when I'm crazy and I need to just sit down and play the green deck.
Yeah, I think that just stems from a mutual respect.
Trusting your.
Yeah, and trust. Like, I don't think anybody on my team is going to try to make me make a bad decision. I believe that everybody has my best interests at heart. So if, you know, if a teammate is willing to be like, hey man, I really don't think this is the best idea. I think that this is a better option. Like, and it's not close, right? Like, I really think that you're making a mistake by doing this. I'm gonna listen, because I trust the people that I surround myself with. You know, I trust you guys. So there is that fine line of trusting yourself and trusting your team, and that's a great part about working together, is that the same thing goes that went for limited kind of goes for constructed, right? It's really hard to come to all these conclusions by yourself, and so when you can share information, you know, readily, and build this kind of consensus of what the format looks like, it makes deck choice so much easier.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's the beauty of having a team. Surround yourself with smart people, people you trust, people who are like-minded, that are working hard. That's where you're going to find a lot of your success. So, totally agree with it.
And Doug.
All right, so let's wrap it up here. So we talked a good amount about the PT. Let's give some people some new stuff to talk about. Again, just quick congratulations, excellent finish. Really proud of you, Chris. Where do we turn our focus to now? Right, we got Cincy on the horizon. We got DC very quickly coming up after that. We've had some other spotlights like we talked about. Doug, where's the metagame kind of sit right now? Where do we turn our eye to go?
Yeah, Cincinnati is this week at the recording of this this podcast, movie magic. So I think the main thing is after the Pro Tour. So kind of go back to the last podcast that we did. We said that Izzet was running the show. I don't think that's quite the case. I think it's a dual ruling system at this point. I think it's between Izzet and the Green White Landfall deck. I think those are the tier 1 decks at this time. Izzet Prowess eating up, 3 different types. The Slick Shot, Elusive Otter, the Slick Shot plus 4 Crab, and then there's also kind of a newer version that popped out of London with the Slick Shots plus Elusive Otter and the the
Catcher.
catcher plus
Wild Ride and
yeah,
Turn
just
Inside
kinda
Out.
back to
even
the-
more all in.
Yeah, back to the earlier kind of versions that were way more focused on early pressure.
Yeah, I think that and Green White Landfall are like the two main archetypes. But I think going into the Pro Tour, we had like Prowess was the best deck, and there was like a clear tier 1 and a very big drop down to tier 2. And I think after the Pro Tour, it's kind of the tier 2 is a lot higher, very much more close to tier 1 than it
There's
was
not such a
prior
gap
to Pro
between
Tour.
1 and 2
Yeah.
now. Things are a little
And
more even.
yeah, and like Chris was saying, there's a lot of like decks that are like pretty close playable. And like the tier 2, I think the Mardu Discard deck's a very good choice going in the tier 2. The 4-color and 3-color tablet decks. Appreciator's been doing well at challenges. Lessons, if you're very familiar with Lessons, also a very good choice in that tier 2. And also, of course, Spelementals, has a lot of good resources. Very strong deck, but kind of easy to hate out. So I think anything in those kind of categories of tier 1, tier 2, if you feel comfortable with it, can't be a wrong choice going forward. There's also, a lot of tier 3 decks, what I put in tier 3 that are playable.
Yeah, those are the big losers from the PT, sort of. Some of the decks that failed more at the PT or look a lot worse positioned.
Yeah, Momo was an interesting deck because it did pretty poor at the Pro Tour, but it did win a GP in London. Of course, adapting the practice offense deck, that was discovered by us in the Mardu deck. But I do think that there will be an interesting thing to look at is that we identified the practice offense was a very good card, and it kind of popped into the Mardu Discard deck. But I do think there is a good thought experiment and probably some exploration to find out what other decks could play it. And the player that got first with Momo decided to go with it, and it paid off. So there could be some interesting decks, some white-based aggro decks that could pop up at this next RC cycle. There are some other decks that could be on your radar, but I'm not a big fan of that tier 3. The blue-white flash deck, even Zevin Faust, who the creator of the deck and top eight 2 Pro Tours with it, says not to play it. A deck that you could face this weekend that could definitely be something. The Gogari deck, the 5-color Mentals deck, 4-color Kona. I think those decks you will see, but I personally kind of steer away from. They have glaring weaknesses into the top tier decks. So if you do plan on playing one of those decks, make sure you have good game plans, and be careful of a road. A road is definitely a big
lot
winner
of
of
a
the Pro
road
Tour.
decks.
Yeah,
Like that's kind of making its way into a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah. So I definitely whatever deck you decide to bring to Cincinnati or DC or to our overseas friends to those RCs, you need to make sure that if you're playing a creature deck that you have basics fine with a road, that a road doesn't destroy your game plan completely. So
add an extra basic to your deck.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, the winner, the guy who got second at the Spotlights was playing a second Swamp over at Gather Shrine and Mardu. Kind of go back to that. Would you, Chris, as one of the premier Mardu players, what do you feel about that?
I think it makes sense with more copies of a road being played in the format. It is gonna hurt you some amount of the time, just missing that extra white source. And I even with the Gala Shrine, I ran into some issues with the mana at the Pro Tour. Not like unreasonable issues, but just like naturally you're gonna play
natural
10 rounds of
3-color deck
Constructed.
that
Like it's gonna happen sometimes, but missing white mana was like really backbreaking because it's like, man, if I could just cast offense, this game would be over. Or cast academic and then offense, right? Having double white on that turn 4.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that your brain tends to remember is, oh man, I couldn't do this. So I could see it. The Swamp makes sense to me. I think Arne put out a standard video about the Mardu deck, and he really wanted to play more fast lands and less shock lands. That has not been my experience. I think the fast lands are good in the 3-color aggressive decks, but having that untapped mana on turn 4 is a huge deal. So personally, my advice, you listen to whoever you want, but my advice would be to not run the extra fast lands. I think that the shock lands are kind of like a necessary evil, and you should just play them, maximize the number of untapped lands on turn 4 in your deck as possible. So, but yeah, I think the basic swap is fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. I think you're right. Mardu's definitely a deck you should watch out for. To our viewers, if you want to learn more about the deck, subtle plug incoming.
Yeah.
We do have a
Not so subtle at all.
Not so subtle. We do have a Mardu guide on the Metafy page that Chris and Gavin created together. Please check that out if you're interested in the deck. But Chris, congratulations on your finish. 11-5. Insanity, man. You're cute for Amsterdam. Thank you for taking the time to talk to Jason and I. And we're your biggest fans, so we're very happy of your success, and we hopefully we'll continue the success, and hopefully we can crack that top 8 pretty soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much,
did
Chris.
A great job.
Later.
Yeah. Okay, so that will kind of conclude our interview with Chris. Appreciate bringing him in and chatting with us. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope that it was, we were really excited for his success and seeing him kind of really start to flourish on the PT.
A well-deserved player, a very hard worker. Of course, I'm biased. He's one of my best friends. But, we're very happy to have him on the team. Very happy for his success. But that pretty much wraps it up for us. Good luck to everyone who's going to play in Cincinnati and DC. We'll see you there. I know I'm bringing Trusted Control to Cincinnati, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, no, trust your read, Doug. I like it. No, all seriousness, though, thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We do look forward to seeing everybody in Cincinnati and DC. Travel safe.